Most retellings of the Odyssey end with a satisfying image. The suitors are dead, Penelope finally recognizes her husband, and Odysseus has reclaimed his home. But Homer does not stop there. The doors of the palace close on one conflict and immediately open onto another. The dead men have fathers, brothers, and allies. Laertes still does not know that his son has returned. The people of Ithaca must decide whether the massacre was justice or murder. And Odysseus, after 20 years of struggle, is still capable of turning victory into another war. The true ending of the Odyssey is therefore not simply about whether Odysseus reaches home. It asks a harder question. Can a hero who has mastered monsters, storms, disguises, and revenge finally master himself? The suitors reach Hades. Book 24 begins far from the marriage bed and the royal hall. Hermes gathers the souls of the dead suitors and leads them toward the underworld. Homer compares the frightened spirits to bats squealing inside a dark cave. In the meadow of Asphodel, they meet the shades of Achilles, Patroclus, Ajax, and Agamemnon. One of the suitors, Amphimedon, explains how Penelope delayed them, how the bow contest trapped them, and how Odysseus returned in disguise to destroy them. Their arrival is humiliating. These are not warriors returning from Troy with songs of courage. They are wealthy young men killed inside another man's house after abusing his hospitality, consuming his property, and trying to seize his wife and kingdom. Agamemnon's verdict on Penelope. The dead king Agamemnon listens carefully because the story mirrors his own homecoming. He returned from Troy only to be murdered by his wife Clytemnestra and her lover. Odysseus returned to a wife who resisted every attempt to replace him. Agamemnon declares that Penelope's loyalty will earn lasting fame, while Clytemnestra's betrayal will remain a warning. This judgment turns Penelope into more than the woman waiting at home. Her intelligence and endurance become part of the heroic meaning of the entire epic. The scene also widens the story beyond Odysseus. The suitors' deaths are judged in the world of the dead. Penelope's reputation is secured for future generations, and the poem begins measuring this homecoming against every failed return from Troy. Odysseus tests his father. Back on Ithaca, Odysseus does something surprising. After finally reuniting with Penelope, he leaves the palace and travels to the farm of his elderly father, Laertes. The old king is not celebrating. He is working alone in worn clothing, weakened by age and grief. Odysseus approaches him, but does not immediately reveal the truth. He invents another identity, calling himself Laertes, and claims that he once welcomed Odysseus as a guest. He even says that 5 years have passed since that meeting. The deception can feel cruel. Laertes has mourned his son for 20 years. Yet testing has become Odysseus' instinct. He tested servants. Penelope tested him, and now he tests his father, perhaps seeking certainty, perhaps protecting himself from emotion, and perhaps unable to stop living through disguise. When Laertes hears that the stranger has no recent news of Odysseus, he collapses into mourning and pours dust over his gray head. The sight finally breaks through Odysseus' control. He embraces the old man and tells him that the lost son is standing before him, the orchard that proved his identity. But Laertes asks for proof. Words and tears are not enough after so many years. Odysseus first shows the scar on his leg, the same scar that revealed him to Euryclea earlier in the poem. Then he gives a second proof that no impostor could invent. He names the trees Laertes gave him when he was a child: pear trees, apple trees, fig trees, and rows of vines. The exact numbers belong to a private memory shared between father and son. The orchard is one of the quietest and most important symbols in the Odyssey. Odysseus is recognized not by a weapon, a crown, or a story from Troy, but by living things rooted in Ithacan soil. His identity is tied to family, land, memory, and inheritance. Laertes accepts him, and the reunion restores the final broken generation of the household. Athena strengthens the old king's body and presence. For the first time, Laertes, Odysseus, and Telemachus stand together, grandfather, father, and son. The families demand revenge. While the family reunites, news of the slaughter spreads through Ithaca. The bodies of the suitors are carried away for burial. Their relatives gather in grief, anger, and shame. For them, the palace massacre is not a finished act of justice. It is the beginning of a blood debt. The assembly divides. Laertes reminds the people that he warned them and argues that the suitors brought destruction upon themselves through their own reckless behavior. More than half the gathering accepts this judgment and refuses to fight. But Eupeithes, the father of Antinous, demands revenge. His son was the first suitor killed by Odysseus' arrow. He does not describe Antinous as an invader of another man's household. He describes a murdered son whose death must be answered. This is the moral pressure that Book 24 adds to the epic. Odysseus had strong reasons to punish the suitors, but justified violence still creates grieving families. One side calls the massacre justice. The other calls it an unforgivable killing. At this point, the question is no longer whether Odysseus is clever or brave. It is whether his return has restored Ithaca or pushed it towards civil war. Before the armed relatives reach Laertes' farm, Athena asks Zeus whether the fighting should continue. Zeus answers that Odysseus should remain king, while the people must be made to forget the deaths and return to friendship, peace, and prosperity. That answer is important. The two sides do not negotiate. They do not confess wrongdoing or agree on a shared version of the past. The gods decide that the cycle must end because human anger is about to make Ithaca destroy itself. 3 generations take the field. Eupeithes and his followers arrive armed at the farm. Odysseus prepares to fight beside Telemachus, the faithful servants Eumaeus and Philoetius, the old servant Dolios, and Laertes himself. Athena gives Laertes renewed strength. The old father raises his spear and strikes Eupeithes through the helmet. The father of Odysseus kills the father of Antinous, completing a brutal symmetry between two families. Laertes rejoices because his son and grandson are competing in courage before his eyes. After years of grief and isolation, he has been restored to the heroic household. Yet his return to strength also brings one more death. Odysseus and Telemachus charge the remaining men with swords and spears. Homer tells us they would have killed them all and prevented anyone from escaping. Even after reclaiming his house, Odysseus is ready to repeat the total destruction of the palace. This is the danger hidden inside his triumph. Odysseus knows how to survive, deceive, punish, and win. But victory has not taught him when enough blood has been spilled. Left alone, he would answer revenge with another massacre. Athena stops Odysseus. Athena finally shouts across the battlefield and orders the Ithacans to stop. The attackers are terrified. Their weapons fall from their hands, and they turn back toward the city. But Odysseus gives a terrible cry and rushes after them like an eagle. Even the voice of his divine protector does not immediately extinguish the fury that carried him through the slaughter of the suitors. Then Zeus hurls a thunderbolt that strikes the ground before Athena. She warns Odysseus to end the equal war before the king of the gods becomes angry with him. Only now does he stop, and Homer says that he obeys gladly. Athena, appearing in the form and voice of Mentor, establishes a covenant between the two sides. Odysseus remains king. The relatives abandon the feud. Peace is imposed where human memory and anger could not create it. What the true ending means. The Odyssey therefore does not end with the marriage bed, the bow, or the bodies in the hall. It ends when private revenge is prevented from becoming public war. Odysseus' homecoming is incomplete until every circle has been restored: husband and wife, father and son, son and aging father, household and kingdom. Reaching Ithaca was only the first step. Remaining there requires political order and restraint. The uncomfortable truth is that Odysseus does not create that restraint by himself. Athena and Zeus must stop him. The final act of the hero is not one more clever victory. It is obedience to a command that forces him to put down his violence. Some scholars have questioned whether all of Book 24 belonged to the earliest form of the poem. Its sudden peace and unusual structure have invited debate. But the Odyssey as it survives ends here, with Laertes restored, a civil conflict interrupted, and a covenant imposed. That ending changes the meaning of everything before it. Killing the suitors may reclaim the palace, but it cannot by itself rebuild a society. Justice without an ending becomes revenge, and revenge without restraint becomes another war. Conclusion. Odysseus faced the Cyclops, Circe, the Sirens, Scylla, shipwreck, captivity, and the armies of Troy. Yet his final test was simpler and more difficult. When victory gave him the power to keep killing, could he finally stop? He stops only when the gods draw a boundary that human rage refuses to recognize. That is the true ending of the Odyssey. Odysseus stays in Ithaca. He keeps his throne, restores his family, and accepts a peace that does not erase the past but prevents it from consuming the future. Was Athena's intervention a just ending, or proof that Odysseus could never have ended the violence alone? Share your interpretation in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to Gods and Heroes Unveiled, and continue with our movie versus Homer comparison on the end screen to discover how modern adaptations changed the meaning of Odysseus' return. Thank you for watching, and may wisdom and courage guide your journey.